Hello and welcome to an exclusive hour-long programme with me, Alex Belfield, talking to two of my favourite people, the very lucky Eamonn Holmes and Ruth Langsford. How are you?
See, I told you there was somebody out there that likes us. We've found
He's
him.
the one. Why is he lucky?
Well, he's lucky because he's with you.
Oh, Alex, thank you. He is. That's very true,
Yeah,
actually.
well, you should live with her, Alex. It's a different story. It's a different story. There's showbiz personas in real life. No, but I think we're pretty much on air what we are off air as well.
Yeah.
A lot of people put up this facade that they've got this perfect partnership and whatever. We just have the same partnership that everybody else has.
We argue a lot.
Yes, the worst personification of that was we had to appear on the Ant and Deck show, and we did this challenge called Beat the Boys, which was racing them around a track. And there's a clue in that title, Alex. It's called Beat the Boys. So it's about winning. So I organised a strategy to win this game, and it was very simple. I said to Ruth, the problem is when we go around this chicane, this track, people are inaccurate with their instructions. What they do is they say left a bit, right a bit. Now, I should point out that you're blindfolded at this stage. The person behind the steering wheel is blindfolded and the other partner is working the pedals, the accelerator and the brake. So you depend on your partner who can see their instructions, and to me they have to be precise. So I worked out a system and I said, Ruth, what we do is we say 1:05, midday, 5 to 11, 10 to 10. Are you with me? So you turn the steering wheel, use it like the time on a clock, so down to 3:15. Perfect, precision. When just as we're about to go on this, Ruth says the following: I don't understand this. Do you want to say that bit?
I didn't say it in that stupid, whiny
voice. I don't
voice.
understand what you're talking about.
Everybody I've spoken to, whenever I say, he said 12 o'clock, 5 to 11, 5+1, have all gone, what? What's wrong? Look,
No,
on
but
the
Ruth
it was good
started
enough
saying-
on the golden shot, left a bit, right a bit, fire, wasn't it? If you remember the golden
Ruth
shot.
started saying then, what do you mean 10 to 4, 10:15? I said, I didn't say 10. It's only 10 to 10, 5 to 11, midday, 5:1, precision. It's like pilots. It's like fighter pilots.
I said to
They
you,
don't
not-
say bandits at 6:15. They say bandits at 6 o'clock high, 12 o'clock high. That's the way they talk. Bandits at 9 o'clock. That's the way they talk. So I said, all right, I will drive. And that was a bad idea. I changed the plan.
It's a very bad idea because A, he doesn't
last
drive
minute.
very well. And also, as everyone will have witnessed when they saw the film, that he was totally disorientated by being blindfolded. And every time I said left, he went right. When I said right, he went left.
No, because as we set out, she was then just supposed to not to follow the instructions, but give the instructions. So we go into the chicane, and I'm blindfolded, and Ruth says, down a bit, what way? Round a bit, left a bit, right a bit. I said, what, is it 1:05, 3:15? How much right is it? Well, it's just right.
And he was shouting like he is now.
And it was a disaster. We hit the cones and we were beaten by an almighty margin. We were beaten by 2 minutes or so by
It's so
Ant and
funny
Deck.
because I've had so many people after that saying to me, oh, that's just like me and my husband in the car. I laughed so much. We can't drive together. And the thing is, the more cross Eamonn got, the more I laughed because I'm really not very competitive, which made him even angrier. Till eventually he pulled his blindfold off, swore at me, which they had to beep.
Do you think Ant and Deck aren't competitive? Do you think every week they take on each other in a
Well, I
challenge?
didn't notice any of them screaming
Beat
and
the
having
boys.
to be
That's what it's called. We were thumped.
There was me thinking that this was an entertainment fun programme that wasn't meant to take things too seriously. How wrong I was.
Well, that's the thing, you see. I didn't take it too seriously. Alex, you're right. I saw it for what it was. It's a bit of fun. Old Mr. Competitive Pants there.
It's like Christmas. We sit down, we get the children around, you get out a board game, and what do you want to do? You want to win. You want to beat your children, don't you? What is the point of having children if you can't be better at them in most things?
And humiliate them.
And show them what more knowledge you have. So no matter what we're playing, these sort of, name the intro or Trivial Pursuit or whatever it happens to be, as soon as we get to the first question and I go, yes, I got that, and I say, everybody knows that, that's enough for Ruth. At that stage, Ruth says,
I say, oh, stop being so competitive. It's only a game.
I'm not playing if you're going to continue like
Also,
this.
he's
And
one
she
of
doesn't,
those-
she packs it in.
He's one of those really sarcastic people, said he'll pick out the card.
How many
and before
wives
he's
did
asked
Henry
you-
VIII have? And if I said, 6, and I said the answer is 6, I said, well, everybody knows that. Ruth would go, no. Why does everybody have to know that?
Yes, but he's one of those really annoying people, as he gets the card, before he's asked the question, he goes, "Oh, this is so easy. Oh, if you don't get this, you must be really stupid." And that you just know what's coming, don't you? I'm not going to get it.
That's the tactics. That's me winding you up, which I can do very, very easily.
That's true.
It's funny, when I was going to start this interview, I was going to describe you as the thinking man's Richard and Judy. I'm not going to go with that anymore after hearing that last 10 minutes.
Oh no, we're more like the Clampetts or something. We are the Beverly Hillbillies. We are more like, yeah.
I think that's what keeps it exciting, you see. Actually, we met Cleo Lane and Johnny Dankworth, who've been married for 50 years, and they did nothing but bicker, but also laughed, you see. And I think that if you got the laughter there as well, which we do have, darling, don't we?
We do. We laugh a lot in the bedroom, we do.
I do anyway, yeah. I laugh a lot in the bedroom.
We'll get into that a bit later. Ruth, what's it like being with a man who, let's face it, is struggling and can't get work at the moment?
I know. Well, that's why I have to go out to work, Alex, you see, because left to Eamonn, we'd be on the streets and penniless. It's actually a myth that he works all the time. I think what happens is sometimes he's done programmes that might have been recorded, and they're sometimes shown at the same time that he might be doing another live show. So there is this kind of misapprehension that Eamonn is, works 7 days a week. He's not.
I've spotted a gap in the market, basically. That's what
I quite like it. It gets him out of the house.
I just do it cheaper than anybody else. That's really...
You really have mastered the art of being taken seriously and being funny at the same time. There aren't many people who could do a serious news programme for 3 hours in the morning and then come straight to this morning to be fun and entertaining and the housewife's favourite.
Well, that's very kind of you to say that, and I do see that as something, as a mission. Television is the most easy way to make your living that there could ever possibly be, and it's full of people who want to make it difficult. And it's true, and it's full of people who try and make out they are some sort of superior being. We are on television, therefore we're superior to you people who are watching us. I'm not. I am just very, very lucky, and I'm laughing at it the whole way through. Now, you because it's news, why can't you laugh at news sometimes instead of doing it in that sort of way that often people do it? It's like your embarrassing uncle dancing at the wedding or whatever, and they say, "And now for a funny bit on the news." Or people who read the sport. People who read the sport say, "In cricket, England were beaten in the test today," and they're smiling. I want to slap them. You want to slap them. There's a time to laugh or there's a time to smile, but sport isn't funny. Sport's very serious. I don't see sport as a place to be funny. Or the weather. Why do people laugh when they do the weather? Oh, the weather, what a drill, whatever. But there are other things. Why can't we laugh at politics? That's the funniest of the lot, that is. Why don't we laugh at that instead of sport? But I do think that the reason people don't laugh at a lot of items is they don't have the confidence to laugh. Now,
Eamonn is very audacious, he's very cheeky, mischievous, and there are things that he says. He asked Cleo Lane if it was her own hair. You asked her if it was her own hair.
Well, people want to know that. People are looking at Cleo Lane and they're saying she's had that hair for years. Is that hers? Is that out of a box? But it looks different.
But that's why Eamonn's so brilliant, because I would probably be thinking that, but I think, I can't ask that, I might offend her. But he asks it, and he's just kind of got that Irish charm that he gets away with things that some of us...
I don't mean it in a wicked way. I do mean it just in a curious way. And I'm genuinely, I am a nosy person, and I am curious, and there would be no point doing the job that I do if you weren't nosy about people, and again in a nice way. As a journalist, I couldn't be a horrible, wicked, person that sort of goes through people's bins and picks the most horrible things about people. That's not the type of journalism I want. People know if you're asking them a tough question, or if you're being judgmental with them, or if you're on their side or whatever. And I'm interested in my job, and I like doing it.
Most journalists, when things go wrong, like the auto cue, they fall to the floor and don't know how to react. Whereas you, because of the other skill, just put your hands up and go, all right, and get out of it, which is much more comfortable for the viewer.
I absolutely agree with you. I think you've got to stand up, and it's this whole discussion about transparency now in broadcasting, whether you go with viewers' votes and name the cat or the dog the name that the viewers have decided, or you make one up for fun or whatever. And you've got to get these things in perspective. There is a difference between doing something like that or making a mistake like that, not that I'm condoning that at all, and stealing money out of people's purses and wallets the way GMTV did through their they're a phone-in scam. And you've got to get these things in proportion.
We're back on your favourite local radio station. It's Alex Belfield talking to Eamonn and Ruth today. That's nice, isn't it? When you've got Richard and Judy, you've got Philip and Fern, and Eamonn and Ruth. Everybody knows exactly who you are. That doesn't happen to many people in show business.
Yeah, ER, we're like royalty. But we're doing this together and working together, and we're lucky because we are only the sort of holiday stand-in for Philip and Fern. So we do the summer and the half terms and that sort of thing. And quite frankly, that is enough. That's the way you want to do it. It's given us huge respect for Richard and Judy, who would have to do this all the time and then go home and live with each other as a result.
There is a big difference, but co-presenting is hard enough
to
kind of chemistry. And you look at Fern and Philip, and they got this great chemistry as mates. But you have to kind of grow that chemistry, don't you, within its friends.
See, but I don't believe you with chemistry. See, I think chemistry, by and large, is false. By and large, it's just things that producers would like everybody to think happens. I don't care who you are in television. No twosome in the regions, nationally, wherever, get on all the time. They don't. But in the world of media land, you have to pretend they get on all the time. The nice thing about working with your partner is you don't have to pretend you get on all the time.
What I was going to say was that thank you, before you took over
just
completely.
My theory.
And,
just my theory.
Like he always does. Is that you don't have to create that chemistry, it's there. But it's interesting, the kind of other side of that coin is that there are things you'd say to your partner you would never say to your co-presenter, who isn't your partner. So, I'm sure I must ask questions that Philip doesn't agree with or thinks are a bit stupid. He wouldn't say, and likewise I wouldn't to him. Eamonn, the minute we come off something, he'll go, "Why did you ask that? What a stupid question!"
You just made that. Now, sorry, you see. Well, I'm quite offended with that. When have I ever said you've asked a stupid question?
Darling, you have.
Well, that's a lie. You're lying now. You know to look at her face. She's just made that up, and she's trying to.
And he said to me the other day in front of everyone, "Have a mint to your breath." He pointed at me.
Yes, your normal co-presenter wouldn't say things like that. Well, all I ever am, I'm constructive with you in terms of interviewing.
That's what it is.
I get the feeling when you go home, does he train you how to be a better interviewer, journalist and person generally?
Well, actually, he does, because he's the most fantastic journalist interviewer. No, seriously, can I be serious now? This is honestly true.
Don't be nice about him. He's just sat here insulting you for the last 20 minutes.
Nice about him,
build her up all the time.
I am
That's the myth.
I do learn an awful lot from working with him, because I do think he is a superb broadcaster. I watch and learn, and there are things, interviews that we do, I think, I wish I'd have thought of that ending, or wish I'd thought of that question. So I do learn a lot from him, and if he wasn't my partner, I would work happily with him and we'd never have a crossword, because I think he's fantastic and brilliant at his job. All we argue about is the kind of things that other couples argue about all the time, or say, "I don't like that shirt on you. Why did you wear that? You look fat," or,
And you also have got to accept that different people do things different ways. Ruth and I are just completely different types of broadcasters, so I would never try to impose the way I do on her. If she ever asked me for guidance, I would give her guidance, but you can't impose anything on Ruth, because Ruth doesn't like being told to do anything. Is that fair enough?
That's absolutely 100% correct.
Marvellous, we agree on something. My perception is, and I know nothing about anything, is that you've either got it or you haven't with TV and radio probably. You've either got an interest in people and an ability to communicate naturally, or you're one of those people that needs a list of questions. And I do see it on all different programmes.
But to be fair, I would always have, if you came and looked at my script, I don't have questions, but I might have bullet points just to remind me. So, I can look down and go 50th anniversary, new CD, daughters in hospital or something, just to remind you. It doesn't mean you've written a question. We certainly don't have questions written for us on This Morning, and it is very much a conversation.
You have to budget in fear. You see, fear. Once you go into studio and you get panicky and your heart rate rises and your mouth dries and some things go wrong and the running order's changing, that's when you forget. Also age, when you get to my stage, you forget. I forget people's names all the time. I do have to write out people's names, Alex, sorry, at the top of the page. So sometimes you've got to budget in the fear factor as well. So it's good to put points down. But I think as well, if you are genuinely, I watch and read everything. Again, Ruth and I would be different from this. She would say to me, "What are you watching that old black and white documentary for? What are you reading that for? What are you doing that for?" But I find the more knowledge that I absorb, the easier my job is. And I think you would see that. You'd say to me after something, how did you know that? How did you know? And I don't know how I know it. I know it from somewhere. But
we are very different because, I read all the briefs and I do all my homework and things because I think, to me, I feel informed. Whether I use any of that or even go, but, I've read, they started out in theatre and they did this, and Eamonn will come straight in with a much more kind of current question. But I feel happier that I know the other stuff if it came up. Half the time
I would look at the other stuff and say you don't need to know all that. So what you need to know is what this person is doing this week or where they're at the moment. And so it's different ways of approaching it. But the lovely thing about having a partner who approaches things in a different way that you do is when you have an off day, they're in there to fill the gap. And and hopefully that's what it's about at the end of the day.
It's like kind of driving the car and sometimes you take a back seat.
Let's not go back there again. Let's not get into that.
We can't. We're so bad in the car together. When we're doing this morning, we can't share a car. So we're coming from the same house. We did it once. This is honestly true. We did it once, and Eamonn said to me, "What time do we have to leave?" And I said, 6:45. He went, "What? That's too early." I said, "Look, 6:45, 7 o'clock at the absolute latest, Eamonn. I need to be there for 8. 7 o'clock. I'm pacing around down the hall, thinking, where is he? Went up. He's in the bath. Actually, still in the bath. So of course I go mad. We have a row. Get into the car. He wants the air conditioning on at -30. He's got that talk sport radio.
Radio 5 on.
Yes.
I listen to the news and sport.
And
I
I
you want
like
to hear
quiet because I'm reading my briefs as I do. It was a disaster, absolute disaster. And I said never again. So we come in separate cars now.
It's amazing how you're even still together, isn't it?
No.
Two things you said from that last conversation about the interviewing side. I think it's a great skill to have an earpiece, a producer, a stage manager, 16 cameras looking in the right one, and not be distracted and make it look as if the only person around you is the person you're interviewing.
I didn't find it easy to start with. When I was, very, very young, I was a newsreader when I started. I found that very distracting. But eventually you get used to it. Now I couldn't do without it. I have what we call open talkback, so you hear everything in the gallery. Because to me, you are then across a problem before it happens. So if I'm talking to somebody, interviewing them, and I know we're coming to a piece of film, and then I hear them going, roll VT5. Hello, VT5, where are you, VT5? Oh my God, VT5's not there. You hear this kind of panic start. There's obviously a problem with that, but slow down here, have another question ready. So you kind of preempt problems, and you're across everybody. You can hear the camera instructions. And I always say, a lot of women particularly say, I couldn't stand that. And I say to women, listen, I bet you can sit at a dinner party at one end of the table talking to somebody and your husband's at the other with a very attractive blonde, and you're looking like you're completely attentive to this man who's boring you to death at one end, and when you get into the car you say to your husband, I heard you saying to that girl how nice you thought her dress was, because women you can hear another conversation. So that's all it's like. Or if you're on the phone and somebody else is talking to you, so you just kind of get used to it, really.
Did you ever speak to this blonde lady again, Eamonn?
I learned my lesson. Once bitten, twice shy.
Your schedule's interesting, Eamonn, because, for example, this morning, when we're taping this today, you did Sky News this morning for 3 hours, then you come to do This Morning, then you've got radio shows and columns and all other things going on. How are you getting through your day at the moment? Is it power napping? Is it some kind of chemical enhancement? What is it?
Well, maybe I just have more stamina than other people. I don't see it that way. I mean, if I was a delivery van driver, I would have, 10, 15, 20 jobs in a day. I tend to count my lucky stars. I don't see my jobs any different than that. I move on from one thing to the next. I certainly was heavily influenced by the job that my father did, and he was a carpet fitter. He was very, very good at it, and he would bring us out. He had 5 sons, and we would help him or try to help him, but I was a complete inconvenience. I was the only son who couldn't actually do it, and it was very hard manual work. And when people say to me, you work hard, I think of my dad or my brothers, and I think, no, I don't work hard. I don't work hard at all. All I do, I remember one of my children once was at school, and they were 5 years of age, and the teacher said, now today we're going to write about what your daddy does for work. And all the kids were writing about their dads. My son Niall just wrote, my dad talks to people. And I came home and the teacher said, you've got to write more than that. And Niall said to me, but Daddy, what do you do? And I said, son, I just talk to people. That's all I do. And that's hardly hard work.
My mother tells her friends that I answer phones for a living, so they probably think I work in the BT call centre or something. Are you equally as busy? Do you ever run into each other at home?
Well, yes, we do occasionally. We don't bump into each other, don't we? He's watching a black and white movie somewhere, and I'm next door doing Coronation Street. No, I have a really lovely balance. I'm very, very lucky. I have a very nice balance of work and being a mum. Jack is only nearly 6, 5.5, 6. So I don't want full-time work. I don't want to be out of the house all the time. So with this morning and my other bits and bobs, I keep it to a minimum, really, because then I can go home and do all the mummy stuff. Taught Jack to ride his bike without his stabilisers recently, which was fantastic, and I wouldn't have wanted to miss that moment. So, I do what comes along that I need to do, and I don't go looking for anything else. I'm very happy with what I'm doing now.
Probably what I'm about to say is a bit disparaging, and I don't mean it to be, but I think you've got it harder than Eamonn in a sense that for a lady to get work seems to be almost impossible because there aren't that many really good, consistent female presenters.
Thank God for it. Long may it continue.
I think there is definitely some ageism in terms of women getting work in TV. I think
there's actually not a lot of jobs out there. I think people think that there are loads and loads of jobs. There are very few. You would sit and say the type of job someone like Ruth would do. This Morning, Loose Women. You don't present kids' TV. You can't do pop. You can't do, well, there might be cookery programs, but actually there's probably the same 100 presenters or so that are churned around through all the stations, terrestrial and satellite.
But of those 100, there's only about 5 or 6 that seem to be in great prominence. If you look at Fern, for example, she'll do This Morning and then you'll see her doing a big award ceremony or a special. Why is that?
Well, A, because she's very good at it, which is why she's stayed around for so long. Also, I do think often producers and things are very lazy. They just see one person and they just keep employing them because they can't be bothered to look for new faces. I think people don't take a risk anymore like they used to. When I started in television, I worked, I was a backroom girl. I had absolutely no experience at all. And the head of presentation when I worked in the West Country, he took a big risk with me and said, I like that girl. I think she's got something.
Yeah, but let me tell you something else. When you're working with a multi-million-pound budget and you've got a deadline of 1 or 2 days and you're doing a live show, you don't want to take a risk with anybody. You want to pay the money for the person who's going to do the job, or else your head would roll. So there's big pressure on the production teams and on the networks to produce ratings. So it's a combination of a familiar face that the public knows, somebody, a steady pair of hands who can do certain things, and often you'll not take the risk with a new face unless it is a recorded programme. And that you can tailor them within that.
So presumably there's so much invested that they can't take a risk.
Yes, I suppose so. And I do think that there is definitely an upper age limit for women now, and we're all kind of shifted sideways when we get to a certain age. And I think men kind of get away with a few more years, particularly in news and things. You kind of got news babes now, and once you're over a certain age, you're kind of sent off somewhere. And the men stay around. They can be grey-haired with a paunch, and they still carry on. So I do think there's a little bit of ageism when it comes to women in television.
I know you're shaking your head, but I look at American news, and I don't particularly like American news, but they do seem to employ the Barbara Walters, the older kind of anchors who are loved and respected. Yes. There aren't many people actually over 40, are they, doing the news?
You've got John Suchet, you'll have a lot of ladies that I work with at Sky who I'm too gallant to name. I think it's not a question really of age, it's a question of ability. If you're good enough, you'll be around enough. This business doesn't owe anybody a living, and this gets back to people say about me working all the time. A lot of people sit back and they say, I've got one job and that's what I do, and they expect to be there forever. When that one job goes, good luck to you. When my one job goes, I've got 4 others I'm going to jump back on. That would just be me, and that would be business sense. If you were making screws in a factory or you were producing eggs or whatever, you would have more than one supplier. And that is just business sense. And I think a lot of people come into this idea, they go in for the stardom as opposed to the work. They come in and they say, I'm going to be famous, I'm on TV, therefore I'm now owed a living. You are not. If you think it's hard getting into broadcast, it is harder staying there.
And I think something you said last time as well, and Dale Winton said the same, you're quite smart that you've got your day job with the news that you do on the background that a lot of people watch, but it's a kind of different audience to your Saturday night 8 o'clock. But your time is only limited there, it changes.
I would love to be on the golf course, I'd love to be in the gym, I'd love to be in the cinema doing things, lying on a sunbed somewhere. That would all be very, very nice. But if you ask me why I've lasted 27 years, it hasn't been for my fantastic looks or your ability in one certain area. It's because love many, trust few, and be adaptable and be varied. And it pays dividends.
I like that. Love many, trust few, says Eamonn Holmes. I like that. I'll remember that one.
Before we go, you mentioned earlier about this trust thing with TV now. It's not in a very good place, as radio isn't either. From my point of view, I have to now make it absolutely clear that we're not live when this is going out, because I'm at This Morning with you today and we're not really there.
It's ridiculous. You see, no member of the public, that is idiots who are in charge, actually treating the public like complete morons. So the rules are there to be interpreted, not to be implemented fully. It's a nonsense. People really don't care whether the interview is recorded or not. There's lots of things. When you go to a movie, you don't want to know, is that a special effect or not? You may be curious about it, but you're not going to walk out and say, do you know, that mummy film, that wasn't really the pyramids in the background. They were cartoon versions. Well, blow me over. So listen, as I said before, there is a difference between stealing money from people and creating and getting into production. And I think a lot of people in broadcast need to wise up about this, because the public aren't stupid. People have their own video cameras. People now can make their own films. People are so literate with their video phones and all sorts of things now. People know what editing is about. All people want is a good show. They don't care about anything else. Is it good? Is it bad? And as long as you're not in a criminal way deceiving people, that's where you've got to draw the line.
If this was a bank that took £8 million, for example, from its customers, wouldn't somebody go to prison at this point?
I suppose they would, yes, and there are investigations obviously raging in TV at the moment. I think it's a great shame, because there are, a lot of programmes who have come out of this clean. I have to say, This Morning being one of them. We were investigated like everybody else, and we run a lot of competitions, and we came out of that absolutely fine. And it's definitely tainted people's perception when there's a competition running, and I think that's a shame. Like Eamonn said, there's a huge difference between saying, look, we recorded this earlier, who cares, as he said, as long as it's a good interview and it's a fun programme, to actually telling people, phone in and you can win this, and they've already picked their winner. It'll go away, I'm sure, and people's trust, I hope, will come back, because 99% of us are good guys.
The difficulty, I suppose, is that they're continuing to expose different programmes, and from my grand's perspective, who is not media savvy, she reads all these stories and thinks, well, who can I trust? So it does impact everybody. The sad thing is when somebody like you, Eamonn, could get involved because it's your programme. Presumably you're never involved with the minutiae of who picks the competition winner or when that is picked as a presenter.
No, but for instance, on radio or some programmes in the past, say for instance we had a guest who came in and they said, say it's a footballer or a cricketer or something, and this famous cricketer comes in, you've Ian Botham, and he says, look, I'm going to sign this bat for you and a copy of my book. And I'd say, Ian, thanks very much, and I'll tell you what, we're going to give this away today to the person who's got the wittiest joke about Ian Botham that phones in the next hour. Now, the whole problem is what is the wittiest joke? Now I have to have a panel from the United Nations gathered round, and we have to count the votes and do this, and it all has to be adjudicated on, as opposed to be said, you know what, the one that really tickles me is this one here. Can't do that now. But that's a nonsense. People don't care. It's Ian Botham's bat and a book. It's a bit of fun, and we've given it to someone who's given us a laugh that day. Thank you and goodbye. Now, apparently, you can't do that. You have to have panels sitting to do all this. I just think sometimes, thank goodness, I've seen the best years of broadcasting, because it really is. It's becoming a politically correct state. Everything is so rigid, and I will see it as my challenge in the years to come to wheedle my way around that and try and still make programmes as fun and as mischievous as possible.
The only reason I'm doing this interview today, I'm going to be honest with you both, is because I need advice. I do back-to-back interviews with people like you who are very successful, and then occasionally someone will slip through the net who bores the pants off me. Now, how do I feign my interest in someone who's boring?
I don't look interested. Ruth tells me off all the time. I mean, I have people who actually... I am brilliant prior to interviews, and Ruth and other people who have worked with me in the past, I will meet people. They're usually American, and they're usually young pop stars. And they come in and they're surrounded by their people. who are awful, and they'll say, what are you asking? What way will you do this? What's your link going to say? What are you going to do this? And there'll be certain requirements. We will say at the top of the programme, we're going to wave to this pop star. If this pop star says, hi guys, how are you? They will say, that was not part of the contract. We do not wish, we want to see the lighting that's for this and whatever. And eventually I'll get to the stage, I'll walk to the guest. I always believe in talking to my guests beforehand. And if I think they're going nowhere and they're saying nothing, and they usually are pop stars, and some of them are Brits as well, and they try and remain aloof and very cool, I just say it quite simple. I'll say, you're going to look a complete ass out there. Now, if I was you, I'd get a story together, because I'm going to ask you all these questions. Whether you choose to answer them or not, it's up to you. But we can do it the hard way or we can do it the easy way. And I will be quite blunt with people. And if someone's down for 8 minutes, I'll say, I'm not spending 8 minutes there, 2 minutes, and I will come out, and I'll be brave enough to come out of an interview earlier, because too many people think it owes them a living. But having said that, most of the monosyllabic ones, when they get on air, they turn it on. The thing that irritates me most is not the ones who look grumpy and whatever, it's the ones who are false, the ones who've got away with a whole career of people believing, oh, how lovely she is or he is, and they're absolute poison. The other people who are difficult to interview are actors, and they're usually from the Royal Shakespeare Company, and they're in a very successful sitcom, and they're really famous through being in some hugely being very funny, and the public love them, and they say, oh, we love her, we love him, and you put them down, they say, well, I'm not talking about that character. There's only one character that I play. And somehow we said we are supposed to go,
you're not singing my King Lear, the old Vic, darling.
And you're trying to say, seriously, so that's only make-believe? So in that soap, you're not really that person? I never got that, never knew that, thank goodness. And they are the ones who don't play along with the game as well. That's difficult, but that's part of the challenge of what you do, and you try. And the other thing is, sometimes people are just nervous and very, very frightened, and it's your job to bring the best out of them.
Eamonn said, I don't like precious people, and he's probably quite right. A lot of them are pop stars, and I think a lot of that is the people around them. Often it's not.
And they're all here today, gone tomorrow.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean, the amount that I could tell you about over the past 10, 12 years who had a one-hit wonder, and then they made the mistake of having separate dressing rooms and limousines bringing them here and there, whatever, and their record company drops them like that, and then they beg to get on programmes, and that's it.
It's the entourage they often have with them as well. It's quite ridiculous. You know, and sometimes they're like 18, 19, and they've bring in 25 people with them, somebody to carry their cup of water. I have to say, I do want to slap them sometimes and say, for goodness sake. So I don't like preciousness. Do you know what? I can forgive people for being boring, because somebody else, my boring is somebody else is very interested. Right. So I would be completely professional. I might inside.
Many people are bored listening to this.
Yeah, exactly. And Alex is being professional. He's nodding. He's got that face as if I'm really, really interesting. And that's what you do, don't you? You're professional, getting paid. That's what we're there for.
I'm not hearing a word you're saying. I'm just nodding. That's all.
He's thinking of someone else completely.
I didn't even know you were Ruth till you sat down. I was expecting Fiona Phillips or somebody. The only time it's happened to me is when I did somebody from Neighbours who's now in Emmerdale, and she said, under no circumstances mention Neighbours. And I just said, well, excuse me, what do you suggest I talk about? Because I don't know anything else about you. That's all you've done. In those situations, do you just have to really stand your corner, or how do you deal with it?
That's when Eamonn will. I mean, I've heard him say that. Anyway. He'll say to people, look, I'm sorry, but if you're not prepared to talk about, Neighbours, for example, what else do we know about you? Tell me something then. Give me something to talk about here. And he'll be very blunt, where I would go off panicking. I'd go running off and going, oh my God, I've just talked to her and she says she doesn't want to talk about Neighbours. What are we going to say? And he'll go stomping in. We've got 8 minutes
here, so what do you suggest we fill it with? And, I understand what I don't like is people make mistakes in their personal life. And because they've done that, it doesn't mean we always have the right to know about everybody's personal life, or the intricacies, or the pain, or the hurt that surrounds their family. And I'm respectful towards that. So I think sometimes there are legitimate times when you can talk about those things, and there's times when you don't have to talk about those things. And so from that point of view, I don't necessarily have to know the minutiae of everybody's life or their mistakes that they've made. But I think you want to celebrate or be curious about why they do what they do. And I think what you don't want to do is the interview everybody else has done. You want to find out things that other people don't know about the guests.
I think people have an absolute right to say, I don't want to talk about my private life, even if it's been in the papers. And I think sometimes there are episodes in people's life that they want to draw a line under, and you think everybody deserves a second chance, let's move on. But I think it's ridiculous when somebody, who we know for either being in, a magazine or being in a certain soap, then says, I don't really want to talk about that. And you go, well, do you know what? That's what people know you for. They don't know you for saving lives. That's what you're known for being in a soap, and that's what you're here to talk about. So they can be tricky.
Yeah. It's the ones who go to the West End after being 5 years in a soap, and they say, I don't want, as you say, they don't want to talk about the soap, but I want to talk about the West End. And I said, well, if I live in Aberdeen, or if I'm in Londonderry, or if I live in Swansea or Plymouth or Norwich, I'm probably not going to this thing in the West End. I don't even know where the West End is. So the only thing I know about is you in Emmerdale or you in Coronation Street or whatever. And I think you've got to spell out the realities to people. People love to reinvent themselves and think everybody should just go along with that.
Who's the worst interviewee you've had then?
Well, worst and difficult is two different things. I was going to mention Michael Barrymore, who I did last Christmas, and I sat opposite him wondering, at what point do I go down the line that I'd got to go down? We were sat opposite each other for 35 minutes, and you have the same type of interviews on This Morning particularly, where people come on for PR reasons to sell something after something's happened. He was very gracious and answered my questions, but do you have that understanding before you start?
I will be quite straight with people. I would say, I'm going to ask you about this. I don't like the sly ones. I don't like people who look at you, who would be interviewing me and be all smiley and nice and then knife you in the stomach as you're sitting there. I think people deserve to know what's coming their way. And also why broadcast is much more truthful than print. You can, what you hear and what you see is what you get. In print, you can do a 2-hour interview and they take the one question, the one answer, and they manipulate it with a headline. So broadcast is always more preferable, I think, to print.
I would always say to people, particularly on a live show, look, a lot has been written about you. This is live. So I wouldn't be doing my job properly if I don't ask you this. Everyone watching at home wants to know, the answer to this question because that's what they've been reading in the papers. Now, this is your chance to answer it however you want to answer it. It's live. You can tell them the truth. You can evade it. But, I have to ask it. It's my job. And I would look very stupid if I didn't ask.
Mine is pop stars as well. I can't bear them, and I very rarely have them on this season. I don't think I'm doing any pop stars at all because they've got nothing.
Very highly of you as well.
I'm sure they do. But they really don't have anything to say, and they're normally young and haven't lived a life. That's the problem if you've got people who don't have an opinion. In terms of your show, of course, you're doing daily shows where you get the same people often 3 or 4 times a year. Are there certain people that you dread and you know that you've got to have them on because they're quite big?
Yeah. You usually have them on because for some strange reason networks like them, or they've signed them up on some sort of deal where they've got to pay them anyway, and you look and you say
3 autobiographies a year,
and you say why when everybody you know in real life can't stand this person or thinks they're boring or terrible, whatever it is, why does somebody in some network somewhere just think this person is fantastic? So yes, the one's coming, but that's when you can always tell it's a bad interview when the interviewers talk more than the interviewees. That's when Ruth and I turn to each other and talk about our private lives and say, do you remember the time this happened? And you think, great, there's another 45 seconds gone.
But then also, equally, there are people that you are thrilled to see 3 times. We had Nigel Havers on recently, and we've interviewed him, and he's just great fun. He's wicked. Yeah. He's always got something to say, and I look forward to seeing him. Jenny Eclair,
Joe Brand.
And that they'll be current. They're never precious. And those people to me are so talented. They work hard. They come in here. They're charming. Or not. I hate the word charming because it sounds false.
Pleasant.
They're just nice and normal. They have a cup of tea. And you say anything in particular, what can we ask? Oh, ask me anything, whatever, And so it's nice, some people you dread seeing 3 times a year, and others you would love to happily have on every week.
But then there's funny things that happen to you. There's incredibly boring people, really boring people that everybody hates to interview, and they make special requests on certain programmes, and they say, I will only come on if I'm interviewed by Eamonn. Because, it's like he understands me or whatever. Yeah. And that's the embarrassing one. Especially when it's somebody you think, I can't stand this guy. And they make this, and this letter's written, and it's saying, he enjoyed his time with Eamonn so much the last time. And that's where you make a mistake, doing it too well the last time.
I think, often Eamonn is more well known than his guests. And actually, it works really well because people do, even politicians I notice when I'm watching on Sky will often say, yes, Eamonn, was it interesting you asked me that, Eamonn? Not many people get that, do they?
I'm really
they
enjoying
know him well.
interviewing politicians. I think politicians know the worth now of being seen to have a personality as well. And I can be much more cheeky with politicians than most people. And when I say cheeky, I don't mean in that Paxman-esque way, that superb interview. And I don't have that intellect. I can't do that. But I can be man of the people and say, but hold on a minute, hold on, are you just going to tax the hilt off us again with that? And it's...
You asked Tony Blair if he'd been on a sunbed.
I did. And I asked him, I said, Prime Minister, I said, the thing above all the nation wants to know is the hair this week. Where have you got it done this week? He had it coiffured in a particular way. But he, in fairness to him, he's very game for it. Gordon Brown's very game for it. William Hague's very game for it. David Cameron's very game for it. And I think people want to see the more human side of these guys, and they realise that politics, unfortunately, for most people, is a switch off. A man in a suit is a switch off when it comes on the telly. So the more entertaining you can make that, the better. But all interviews, all television should be there simply to inform, to educate, and to entertain. Those old-fashioned Reithian principles. And if you can do that, whether it's a kids program, whether it's an adults program, whether it's pop, whether it's science, whether it's motoring, you won't go far wrong.
Jane Collins was on this morning a few weeks ago, and she said she'd come on when she knew it was Eamonn. She'd said no originally.
Yeah, she does. Joan is very, very good. Now, she is. A lot of people may not look forward to interviewing Joan because she's a woman. She has her standards, and she's really good. She's one of the people that would say she would come on my radio show. She would do various things, and I'm very chuffed. She enjoys things because we talk about all sorts of things. We talk about her playing volleyball at school and school athletics and all sorts of things that she did. And I also, through watching those old black and white movies and things, know movies that most people don't know that she was ever in. And she has worked with some amazing people. No matter what you think of her individually, she has rubbed shoulders with every big name there has been.
And she did look amazing, didn't she?
She
looked amazing.
She has tremendous value, and she's very opinionated. And I think always I would start out with the principle that I would treat my guest with respect, the way I would with anybody. If I was meeting anybody in the bus or in the street or whatever it is, you want to treat somebody with respect, and you want to be interested with them. It's up to them what they then do with that. But as I say to people, I can make you look good during this interview, but it's all about you talking. It's not about me talking. It's about you talking. If you can do that, then that's going to work well for both of us.
I just did an hour special with Jackie Collins, and there was one thing that bothered me, that I banned her from saying the word sex. It was ooh, ooh, ooh throughout the entire interview. It was far too crude. Eamonn Holmes, Ruth Langsford, thank you so much for doing this hour special. It's been great to get to know you both together. And congratulations on what you do on TV. It's so natural, it's so real, and it's so brilliant and rare as well. Thank you for talking to me.
Thank
Very
you
kind of you.
much.